Hello again, Vajragupta here, and I'm going to be talking some more about verses of the Dhammapada. There are actually, even in English versions, there's probably about over 100 translations of the Dhammapada, and they all emphasize something slightly different. Some are more poetic and some are more concerned with the accurate translation of the word. Particularly Pali scholars, would want to do that. The version that I'm using is one published by the Buddhist Society in London, and the translation's by Jack Austin. It's a very old version. I don't know how old. I should think it goes back probably to the 1940s or 50s. Anyway, I really like it. It's a very straightforward version. So here are the two verses that follow the ones that I spoke about yesterday. Hatred does not cease by hatred. Hatred ceases only by love. This is the eternal law. And then, many do not realize that all must one day die. In those who know this fact, all strife is stilled. So that's a pair of verses. And I used to wonder, why do they go together? Most of the verses in this section, you can really see how they go together because they repeat themselves. Here's what happens if you don't behave ethically, and here's a verse if you do behave ethically. It's pretty straightforward, but these two don't quite look like that, do they? So hatred does not cease by hatred. This is, I think, a really hard one for us, really hard, because, when we're treated badly, when we're accused, when we're blamed, we want to hit back. In a way, we can see how the ego grabs onto this sense of wanting to protect itself, really. And any assault on ourselves in any way, verbal, physical, any kind of assault, it just feels really threatening. And we don't like threat, and we react to that. Threat. So hatred does not cease by hatred. Hatred ceases only by love. There's nothing unusual about this verse, is there? In every single religion of any sort, love thy neighbour, do unto others as you would like done to yourself. It's all about us developing love, learning to be more loving than we already are. And actually, probably however loving we are, we can always be more loving. But, I know for myself that actually aversion is quite a prominent thing in my life, It's probably my default place, if you like. I am quite an aversive person. So, I can't claim to be filled with love even after more than 30 years of Dharma practice. Yes, hopefully I'm more loving than I was, but, I've a long, long way to go. And I do know, I have learnt over time and through experience that hatred, giving hatred where hatred has been done to me does not work in any way. And the main thing to notice is the effect that aversion and hatred has upon ourselves. It's a bit like poisoning ourselves, actually. We're poisoning ourselves when we allow ourselves to fall into hatred. If we really look inside ourselves, we can see that it's not a comfortable state to be in. It doesn't feel good. Anger can feel good, can't it? It can feel like energy flowing. It can feel like like we're geared up, like we're alive, like we've got our adrenaline going. So I'm not wanting to deny all of those feelings, but in a way they're inappropriate feelings. They're we need to be able to get that buzz from elsewhere, really. So when we hate, to notice, well, what happens in our body? It all gets tight, doesn't it? We can't really be relaxed and open when we're full of hatred. It's just not possible. So coming back to that metabhavana that I mentioned yesterday, this is how we develop loving kindness, through the metabhavana, through this development, through this practice, this cultivation of loving kindness, through seeing how things really are. So there's many ways that we teach the metabhavana. But essentially, with the metabhavana, that first stage is so important. If we love ourselves, I would say that the more whole we feel in ourselves, the more complete we feel in ourselves, the more generous with love we're able to be. Yeah, I think I would say that. In a way, when we love ourselves, we become bigger. We have a more accurate perspective on life and on other people, but we become bigger in the way of, not a bigger ego, but in the way of being able to hold more in our experience. So it's like, if somebody's being really rude or unpleasant, if we can see that it's coming from where it's coming from, and it may be coming from defensiveness, it may be coming from a misunderstanding, can be coming from all directions, but do we take the time to really notice, what's happening for them when they are being like that, when they're speaking like that? And, we know that we don't always speak well or act well. And, what's our motivation when that's happening? Anyway, I want to turn to that second part of the second verse in this pair, which is, many do not realize that all must one day die. In those who know this fact, all strife is stilled. Well, this really gets to the heart of Buddhism. It really does. Because we don't really know. We're ignorant. We act through spiritual ignorance. And one of the most, one of the aspects of that spiritual ignorance is not really taking on board that we are going to die. That is going to happen to us. It doesn't just happen to everything else and everybody else. But that fact of impermanence is going to affect our own life. And I'm often claiming, and I still do, that the most perfect way to be ready for death, to prepare for death, is to turn towards it, is to be aware of it and to know that it is going to happen. So, here I am. I'm not young anymore, and I could die at any time. People have strokes, they have heart attacks, they have cancer, they have all sorts of things. Once you're in your 60s and certainly over 70, the chances are high that you're going to have to deal with a life-threatening disease, and maybe you will die. Maybe I will die. I can't be sure that I'm going to see tomorrow. So in what state do I want to die? If I know the fact of death, if I really know that, then why on earth would I want to be at odds with anybody? Why? Why would I want to die other than in a state of love, in a state of compassion, in a state of openness to everybody around me? That's how I would want to die. And I think we all would. Love is the most important thing. It's an overused word, of course it is, but it is the most important thing. I'm sure many of us remember that when those planes, or before those planes hit the two towers in New York, some people were able to send messages to their loved ones, and all they wanted to do was to express love, to say the love that was in their heart. That was the message that people wanted to, that was the most important thing they wanted to leave behind. And that's the same for all of us. That will happen. But because it seems so far away, so very far away, it doesn't seem relevant to us. But it really is. It really is. We need to penetrate into this truth of impermanence and know that it applies to us as well as to everything else in the world. And it's, believe it or not, it's a tremendous relief. There's a freedom to knowing we're going to die, a real freedom, because it's like, yes, let's live life now. Let's it's not live it up, but let's really experience life directly. Let's not always be thinking about the past or worrying about the future. Let's really live. And this is where, of course, mindfulness comes in. Because if we're truly mindful, then we are living more brightly, more colourfully, more directly. It is a different way to live than we normally do. And we can all learn mindfulness. If you've ever been on retreat and spent time meditating, I'm sure you've had the experience, you come out of the meditation room and maybe you're standing in a garden or something and you're looking at something as if you've never seen it before. Because suddenly you're really seeing, you're really taking in what you're seeing. Suddenly a flower, you'll notice every petal, every leaf, everything about it. You'll notice the bee on it, supping nectar. But half the time we're asleep. We're awake asleep. At night we're probably asleep awake, and in the daytime we're awake asleep. Our consciousness is capable of changing in all sorts of ways. And we can learn about that through meditation and through contemplating the truths of verses like we find in the Dhammapada. So that's all I've got to say for today. I hope it's given you maybe something to think about, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.